And welcome back to the Money, the Mindset, and the Mentoring podcast. Today we have Lucie Lynn, a serial entrepreneur. And Lucie, when I saw what you're doing with the retreat that you have, with the blueprint that you're running for people to get their mindset right, and just all the things you have going on in your life, I was like, I got to get you on the show. You've got so much positive energy. And frankly, you do a great job of color matching. So, I mean, this is just something that, yeah, it's amazing. So, yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. So, for people who don't know you, just if you could introduce yourself, just let us know a little bit about you, and let's kick this thing off.
Well, thank you, Steve, so much for having me today. I'm so excited and so grateful to be here. So a little bit about myself and how I got started into all of this. It all started. I like to say that I was a little girl with a big dream, and I grew up just outside of Detroit, in the suburbs of Detroit. And just like Napoleon Hill says, that all achievement starts with a burning desire. And ever since I can remember, I've been obsessed with horses, like insanely obsessed, where that was all I talked about, dreamed about, thought about, spoke about, everything. And so needless to say that every single day I would beg my dad, please buy me a horse, please. But like I said, I grew up in not the wealthiest of families, blue collar parents. My mom had 2 factory jobs. So horses were just outside of the realm of possibilities. But I never gave up on my dream. And it wasn't long before I decided that I had to take matters into my own hands. And so the day that I turned 16 was the same day that I got my driver's license, and the same day that I put my ad on Craigslist and I said, I will ride your horse for free. And so what that ended up transpiring was I had all of these yahoos calling me with their unbroke, green broke horses that hadn't been touched or ridden in 5 to 10 years. And here I am, this confident, cocky 16-year-old who thinks I know everything, driving all over God's country to ride these people's horses. And next thing you know, I'm getting bucked off, thrown off, flipped over on top. Everything you can imagine, I experienced it. But it was kind of like a failing forward experience where you live and you learn, and you learn from your mistakes. And it's kind of funny that it's just such a parallel with life. It doesn't matter how many times life is just going to throw you on the ground and you're going to eat dirt. But it's all about that relentless pursuit of your passion and just never giving up and following your dream with everything that it takes, anything that it takes. And so no matter how many times. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, when you started, that's like, because you've got so much, and I want to deal with each of the different packages. So when you started first, one of the things that I think is really interesting is, like, before 16, how many times did you actually ride horses?
My dad would take me on Sundays.
So you had a little bit of experience, but you weren't like a rodeo rider or something, so that you could jump on these greenback or whatever.
Not by any stretch of the imagination. Like, my dad would take me on Sundays where you can like go to rent a horse for an hour, and like we'd wake up early so that way I was the first person there, so that way I didn't get stuck with a group of like 10 inexperienced people. So like me and the guide would go out, and because I knew how to walk, trot, canter on a school horse, I thought that like I actually knew how to like train unbroke animals. So I had a rude awakening, is what we'll call it. Because I never had any formal instruction or education. So it was really the horses that have taught me everything that I know even today.
Wow. And how did you survive that? Like, did you break tons of ribs? Did you, like, what sort of damage are we talking that you walked away from? I mean, that's a lot of stuff. I know of people who were rodeo riders, and they've taken a lot of abuse.
You know what? I have to say that I feel like I have been extraordinarily blessed on this journey, and that I've walking away with, despite the thousands of horses that I've ridden, that I've literally got on their back knowing zero backstory, not knowing if they're broke to ride, if they've ever been handled, how long it's been since they've had a rider on their back. I've been very blessed, and I think that I'm very intentional with everything I do. So I am a huge advocate of meditation. So one of my affirmations is, thank you for my army of angels that surrounds me and protects me. I think that plays a huge role. And I also feel like when you follow the path of your passion, that doors open, and not only is there divine guidance, but there's also divine protection. And I think that's played a monumental role, because given the amount of crazy horses that I've sat on, like it's wild that I've never really experienced any sort of serious injury. Thank you, Jesus, knock on wood.
Well, it's either that or I'm talking just a Wonder Woman, like one of the two. I mean, it's, you've just, you're from another world, come here to talk to us about mindset and helping people become better. And that's unbelievable. That's great. And, one of the things I always wonder is when people start getting into massive action, and whether we like to say that it's purposeful in the sense that we know the direction that we're going, we sometimes don't know the things that we need to go to while we're going through that direction. And sometimes I wonder, it's like, and I've done the same thing too, where you make these decisions and you look back and you're like, I was pretty ignorant to what could have happened to me if everything's would have went sideways. But that idea that I didn't pay attention to the negativity, I was ignorant to the negative, but I fully embraced the positive. And if I think about like what you went through, I mean, it's the idea that you're like, it didn't even come into, I mean, maybe a couple times when you got off, you're like, wow. But, you just got back on again and just said, I'm going to do this again. And you committed. And I think a lot of times people, when they run into these situations, the first sign of danger, they start focusing more myopically on the danger rather than on the opportunity. And you seem to have done a really good job of doing that pivot.
Yeah, so many people are just are focused on what can go wrong. People nowadays, the only way they know how to really use their imagination is in all the wrong ways. What's every single possibility that could go wrong? How could I fail? What could happen? How could people view me? What could happen to my reputation? What if this? What if that? And it's like, wait a second, let's take a step back and flip that. And what's everything that could go right? Like, in a world of possibilities, let's use our imagination to really dream big. And and on the flip side of that, if you choose to stay stuck or to stay living a life of mediocrity, a life that doesn't fulfill you, that doesn't speak to your soul, like, what are you leaving behind? What if you get to your deathbed and you're like, what if my life wasn't on purpose? What if I missed out on all of the opportunities because I was bound by fear and I didn't take a chance on myself? So fast forward a little bit, and I ended up meeting a horse dealer. He'd get in 50 horses a week. I had to ride everything and had to sell it fast, quick, cheap. If I didn't sell it, it was getting sent to Canada. And of course, I was like on a mission. I know. And I was like on a mission to save all the horses of the world. So here I am.
What are they doing to horses in Canada that is so bad?
They were getting shipped to meat for like, they were going.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. They were getting shipped to slaughterhouses in Canada and then getting exported.
I just thought just Canadian horse riders just weren't as good as American ones. You were already trying to say. I'm like, I don't know. No. I know some pretty good ones.
No, that's why I was on a mission. I'm like, I got to ride these horses and sell them. And that was really my first taste of life as an entrepreneur, because it was like, the sky's the limit. And it just so happened to work out for me, because that's all I wanted to do anyways, was wake up first thing in the morning, go to the barn and ride as many horses as humanly possible. And maybe try to throw in a couple meal preps in the mix. But, So I got involved with that, and then I started selling horses from the time I was 16. I went to college, graduated, and then I got scooped up into the corporate world. And so I'm in the corporate world doing these Excel spreadsheets with the world's worst boss. Like, I mean, if you can imagine the most negative, miserable human being on the planet, and here I am like radiating positivity, and I'm like this fresh, like 21, 22-year-old girl talking about like, I had just seen the movie The Secret when I was 18, and I was just like inspired and empowered and full of life. And I'm like telling my boss at the time, I'm like, no, you can't keep focusing on the negative. That doesn't serve you. And he's like, shut up, little girl. Like, that's all woohoo pie in the sky. I'm like, And I was going on business trips where we were traveling all over the country to these different factories or whatever. And he would literally list off every single thing that could go wrong while we're traveling. And I'm like, Justin, like, you are drawing all of those negatives. Like, we're sitting on the side of the road right now with this flat tire because you willed this to happen. Like, let's shift our perception. Let's shift our perception and start thinking positive and start thinking everything will go right. And so, anyways, it was really hard for me to be surrounded by somebody that was just like drowning in negativity all the time. And so therefore I decided to take a chance on myself. And that was one of the most scariest things that I've ever done, was leaving this cozy, comfy corporate job with full benefits and paid vacation. And again, my parents, like, they're old school. So my dad's like, are you kidding me? You've worked, people have worked their entire lives to be in the position that you're in, and you're just going to give it all away. You're going to walk away from it. What kind of daughter did I raise? And I mean, thank God now tables have turned and he's like, oh, this is my little entrepreneur daughter. But that's a different story. But it was scary.
That goes to bring up a point, just generationally speaking. I think, when you look at generations of old, the generation of old was, get that job and work that job such that you can have that 1 week off or 2 weeks off, and then work the rest of the year to pay off that vacation that you just took for those 2 weeks, and slowly pay down your mortgage so that in 25 years or 30 years, your mortgage is paid off, and then you can retire into some, small little house somewhere. And that was always sort of the norm, and breaking of that norm. I think the democratization of opportunity is something that I think is fairly new, because the idea that somebody like yourself or somebody like myself can jump into the entrepreneurial world and have that opportunity to be successful at a high rate of success. And I'm not saying that it's like 90%, but I'm saying even if it's 10% or 20% or 30%, that's a high rate of success. And I think that's really exciting about the opportunities that people have today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my dad was like, you have this job and you're supposed to stay there for 30 years and then you get your pension. And just like you said, you pay down your house and you never leave. And I was like, but wait, Dad, like, there's so much more out there. There's a world of opportunity. And then here my mom is like, oh, well, you need to get pregnant soon and you don't want to leave your job that has all of these salaries, because what happens if you get pregnant without with all the benefits? What happens if you get pregnant without the benefits and without the medical insurance and bada, 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 bada. And I'm like, yeah, Mom, but I'm young and I'm not ready to have a kid. I don't want to have a kid. Like, I really just want to ride horses and pursue my dream. Like, is that okay? I love you, but that's what my plan is. Like, I hope I have your blessing. And so that was one of the scariest decisions I've ever had to make. But if anybody is wondering or guessing if they should take the chance on themselves, my advice is absolutely 1,000%. There have been ups and there have been downs and there have been struggles and there have been everything in between. But I can say with absolute confidence that there has not been one day that I've ever regretted leaving the cube and pursuing my dreams, living this life, because I've done that, I have been able to experience so many different, unique, incredible opportunities that would have never even been a possibility had I stayed in the cube. So
absolutely. With the idea that comfort is the enemy, because I believe that, I love Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And it's kind of weird because most people say, like, when you have a hobby, it's like to make peace or whatever. And I'm like, no, I embrace the chaos. And I find peace within that chaos, because, you have somebody who's trying to choke you, trying to, rip your arm off, whatever it is. And there's so much peace in that moment because it's so focused on one thing for success. Like, you can't be thinking about what's going on and, did I put the dishes away? Did I get ready for none of that stuff matters. What matters is in that moment. And there's a certain peace to that, in that chaos that happens. And I think the same thing applies when it comes to business, is that when you're in the chaos of being self-employed, being an entrepreneur, running a business, scaling a business, there's a lot of chaos that happens, both, politically, economically, human resource wise, just industry wise. There's all these changes that are constantly happening. But there's a peace that comes out of just immersing yourself into that. And that's where I kind of want to talk to you a little bit about like energy state and when people need that sort of that beginning point of kind of getting their mindset in the right way to be successful. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I love talking about energy because at the end of the day, everything is energy. Energy is everything. We are energetic beings. We're operating in a vibrational, attraction-based universe. So essentially, I feel like, just like Dr. Wayne Dyer said, we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. And I think that every single one of our paths, our journeys kind of lead us down this road. And if we're open to it, if we're open to receiving, we can really truly understand that we're spiritual beings meant to grow and meant to evolve. And we each have this unique path that's going to allow us, like afford us the enlightenment and really to become better, become the best versions of ourselves every single day. And it's through our life experiences that we're going to be able to do that. And with me, growing up with the horses, quitting the corporate job, and then creating this business where I now buy, train, and sell horses all over the country. And I've opened up this one of Michigan's largest public trail riding companies on accident. Everything that I've done has I just wanted to share. Like, I love trail riding so much. It was my favorite thing to do. I wanted to share it with the world. And because I did, it grew. And so I'm not here to say, oh, hey, look at me, look what I've done. I'm here to say, like, I've done it and therefore you can too. I want to lead and inspire by example. And I want to encourage everybody that if you find whatever it is that your talent is or that your skill set is, and you exploit that in the service of others, you're going to be met with fulfillment. You're going to be met with unprecedented success and abundance. So it's like, if I can do it, you can do it too. And it's really through that journey, I've really learned so much about the laws of the universe and how to leverage the laws of the universe and understanding that everything moves and everything vibrates and that thoughts become things. And so now I'm on this mission to positively impact and empower people to step into the highest version of themselves, step outside of their comfort zone and become the best versions of themselves mentally, physically, financially, and spiritually. And it's essentially all of the first step in all of that is understanding that energy is our highest form of currency. And it's like decisions shape our destiny. You are where you are today based on every single decision that you've made up until this point. So therefore, what's the one thing that influences every single decision you make? It's your emotional state. So if you're in a peak performance state, if you're feeling passionate and alive, unstoppable, you feel like you can literally hurdle over any obstacle that's thrown your way, then you're going to be making drastically different decisions than you would if you were operating at a lower vibrational state, say full of fear or anxiety or depression or guilt. So therefore, the next question is, well, how many hours a day are you actually operating at a peak emotional state? How many hours a week are you operating? How many hours a month are you experiencing these high vibrational feelings of joy and peace and excitement and passion, feeling unstoppable and worthy? And so what I do is I help people attain and access these states, but not only just access them, maintain them. So that way people are setting themselves up for success, and that way they're moving towards their goal with intention and with purpose. And that way they're setting themselves up for success by putting themselves in the right mindset. So that way they're making the decisions and taking the action and essentially becoming the person who has the lifestyle that they want to create for themselves. So
yeah, and I think with the ability for people to understand that things don't happen to them, things happen because of them, is something that I think people really need to resonate with in order to understand how they can control their environments. Because you'll talk to some people who are like, this bad thing happened, and then I went over here and this bad thing happened. I went over here and this other bad thing happened. And then you would ask them, what's the one consistency about each of those bad things. You were
You.
the person there. And so if you take out the consistency, then you're like, okay, well then, because somebody else could have a completely different experience. I mean, every day I wake up and I feel amazing. Like every day I wake up, even when I'm sick, I feel amazing because guess what? I get the joy of being sick because I don't get sick a lot. So, that's like I get to experience what that feels like for a little while. And so, if I injure myself, it makes you feel a little bit more alive. Like pain is actually sometimes a good thing. And I'm not like talking like weird. I'm just saying that it gives you a connection to the physical nature of your body. And it's like if you work out really hard and you feel the pain afterwards. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. And
So beautiful.
it is a connection. And it's interesting when you talk about the idea of the disconnect between the body and the mind, because, I think of a lot about, the analog connection we have with the environment through our physical body. It's very analog. And the fact that I've got a finger and I've got to reach and I've got to touch something, and I've got these eyeballs that I convert the world that we see into our understanding of what that is through the mechanics of our physical eyeballs. And then we look at, if we take that and put together with who we really are, those things are two very disconnected. This is just a vehicle for us to try to understand what's around us. And so I think it's a unique way of looking at things by then disconnecting yourself from that physical form to say that then you can actually manifest something bigger than what that physical form can really pursue.
Yes. And I absolutely love what you said. I'm all about living from the inside out. So many people, so there's deliberate creators and there's default creators. Probably 98% of the population are default creators. And what that means is they're living from the outside in, meaning they're observers. They're observing whatever thing, person, place, experience, and they're allowing an external circumstance to dictate their inner state, what they're feeling emotionally. And therefore, when you do that, you're living from the outside in. That is the Newtonian model of the world, where an event is going to cause an emotional reaction. Whereas the quantum model of the world, instead of cause and effect, the quantum model of the world is causing an effect. So therefore, if you flip that around, you're living from the inside out, and you're feeling the emotion before the event happens, and therefore what you're experiencing on the inside is going to be a direct reflection of your external world. And it's not immediate, but it will absolutely happen. And that's why it's like, you want a better life? Think better thoughts. And that's
Absolutely.
why
I think if you connect yourself to the result, whether the result is positive or negative, you're connecting yourself to the result. And to me, if I had a choice, I'd probably rather connect myself to more positive results than negative results. And Jocko Willink actually does a really good talk on this. He talks a lot about, we're out, he's out on a mission. Guess what? They dropped us in too far. Okay. How are we going to deal with this? We dropped in this. Good. Everything is good. Good. We're in too far. We're going to be able to get our march going faster. We're here. Good. This is going to happen. Anything negative, if something negative happens to you, just start the sentence off with good, right? Something negative happened. Good.
that.
Now what am I going to do about it? Good. What am I going to learn from this? Good. How am I going to make this better? Because the only thing is, if you think about all invention in the whole world came out of something negative happening, like the idea of inventing anything in the healthcare. Well, because somebody probably died of something. So now we're going to invent something. And so it always came out of something. No, somebody said, good, now I'm going to solve this problem.
Yeah. With contrast comes clarity. When we see what we don't want, then we figure out a little bit faster what it is that we do want.
With the conversation, that's interesting when you said the contrast. Say it one more time, because I want to catch that one more, say it again.
Contrast creates clarity. When we have a better idea, when we're experiencing the contrast of life, the difficulties, the ups and the downs, and the difficult times and the trying times, the valleys of life, in that time, in those difficult times, that's when we get most clear on what it is that we actually do want. So the secret is not continue to focus on what we don't want and place our experience on what we do want, and deny our senses of our current 3D reality, choosing to only see life as we want to experience. And that's the hard part.
Yeah, and one thing I'd like to add on that, when you talk about contrast means, obviously two things that could be considered different. And what I love when I talk about contrast is how you can talk about in the form of relationships and communication. I think too many times we look for congruence, and congruence means we're working both in the same direction. And congruence actually doesn't really create a lot of growth. Contrast creates growth. There's this thing called Hegel's dialectic, which is where there's a thesis and antithesis. You put those together, you create synthesis. So in other words, if you have two competing things and they collide, you can create something beautiful. And so my belief is whenever you run into something, find the conflict, but not in a negative way, but find the conflict in a way that, how can I make this better, more productive? When you have a conversation with somebody you totally disagree with, how do you bring that to something that is successful? Not just prove them how wrong they are.
I love that. Dr. Wayne Dyer always said, if you have the option to be kind or to be right, always choose to be right. And that's so important. And it's just like, and then it's just like kind of like twisting that. And then it's like seeing if there is contrast, especially in communication or in a relationship, like how can I serve? How can I put myself in the other person's shoes? How can I shift my perspective, seeking to understand instead of be understood? That's a game changer when we're talking about communication and conversation.
Absolutely. It's not being right, it's finding what's right. And I think that to me it makes for a way better conversation. Or as you said, just being nice, like nice, the root of the word nice comes from ignorant. So if you're just trying to be nice to somebody, you're actually doing them a disservice. You're not allowing them to be able to grow. And it doesn't mean that you have to be rude, but it just means that we have to be in the pursuit of truth. And the pursuit of truth means honest dialogue. And honest dialogue isn't nice all the time.
Not all the time. But that's the difference. And so the honest dialogue, it can be difficult, but that's why it's so important to operate from our heart instead of our head. Because sometimes when we're caught up in a conversation, whether it's with a loved one or an employee, sometimes it's really easy to just say the first thing that wants to fire off with the mouth. And it's because we're operating from our head. But when we're intentional and we're living consciously, we can remind ourselves like, oh, wait, I want this to be received with love. So therefore, I'm going to very intentionally operate from the heart space. And when you are operating from the heart space, everything that you say, it's just like it's received differently. It's received with love. And therefore, there's not any feelings of animosity or judgment. And that message will be received in such a more powerful way that way you're actually going to positively influence the people that you're speaking to, as opposed to making them feel like they're just being judged or critiqued.
Yeah, I think, it's funny. It's almost as if we went to the same class, but took a different class on the words. Because to me, when I look at from the emotional side can be considered the volatile side in what my perception of what emotions are. So for example, in fighting, if somebody's in a fighting state, they're in MMA or on the street or whatever, and they're fighting with emotions, they're going to move to their lowest form of training. If they're fighting with devoid of emotions, they're going to move to slightly higher than their lowest form of training because they're going to operate without those filters that, hamper their ability to be able to perform. And so it's interesting because we're saying the same thing, but we're saying it with a very different lens, where you're saying that the emotional state is the thing that is the pure state, where I'm saying the mental state, the thinking from the head is the pure state. But the outcome of what we're both saying is exactly the same thing. And it's just two perspectives on the exact same target.
That's so fun. I love that.
Now, the other thing that you talk about is desire. We talk a lot about state. You talk a lot about desire. Work with me a little bit on that. Let's develop that topic.
Okay, so desire, that's really having absolute clarity on what it is that you want in life. So many of my clients, first thing I do, I ask them, okay, what do you want? And almost immediately, everyone starts making a list of every single thing that they don't want. And it's just like, society or the news has us conditioned to focus on what's wrong, focus on the negative. And it's like where your focus goes, your energy flows. So if you're constantly thinking about what it is that you don't want, you're not allowing yourself to move closer to the things that you do want in life. And it's all about, when you're talking about vision and intentionality, you actually have to be intentional with what it is that you want to create in life. So we go through a vision extraction process where we go through the 5 realms of life. So there's health and wellness, there's relationships, which can be any relationship, whether it's a spouse or employee or children, and then finances, which can be careers or investment opportunities, and then fun and lifestyle, because life is meant to be lived and celebrated. And then the last one is spirituality or growth or self-development. It's like once you start really focusing on the spirituality side of things, every single area will blossom and improve. It'll spill over. And so what we do is we help people really narrow in on what it is that they want, because so many people don't know what they want, or they have a depth perception problem, which means they overestimate what they can do in 1 year and they underestimate what they can do in 5 years. And therefore they have this big goal, but it seems so far away and it seems so distant. And because it seems so distant, they're not taking the action steps today as if that thing were that close. Like, we're one decision away from changing our lives. We're one meeting away. We're one podcast away. We're one sale away from a totally different reality. And if we can just hold that space and be open to just live in the receiving mode and be open to that possibility, like, our world can change in an instant. So we help people essentially get really clear and define what it is that they want, so that way they can take measurable action steps to that thing. And then it's all about using your imagination the right way, and then also implementing intention setting, which is like one of my favorite topics, because intention setting is this, like, I like to think of intention setting as putting your order in with the universe. And I know it might sound a little hocus pocus, a little woo woo, but trust me, I've seen it with myself and some of my clients where it's absolutely incredible. The power of the pen, it's like magic. You start writing down whatever it is that you want to create or attract, whether you're doing your tomorrow's forecast or your monthly intentions, whatever that looks like. Whatever, we have different techniques or different formulas in terms of like intention settings. And it is wild the things that people will write down with absolutely no expectation. Like, wouldn't it be nice if, and like, if it happens, it happens, but not having that attachment to it. And then just in the thought of it, your attention to it, your focus on what it is that you would like, you do the work, you raise your vibration, and you're doing your morning routine, you're doing your rituals, you're being intentional with where you're operating. And then all of a sudden, whatever it is that you wrote down effortlessly flows into your experience. Sounds crazy.
Yeah, I think,
sounds like magic. It works.
I don't think it's magic. I think it's, again, when we talk about the analog version of what our body is, and then the metaphysical version of who we are as a person, that to me just resonates with that exact understanding of what we are as a human. And so the idea that what you're going to do is, with intention, you're going to say, what is my mission? What is my purpose? And then that will help develop the desire that you need to do. Because if you don't have clarity on where you want to go, the desire, the first time you run into a roadblock, that desire is going to fade. It's going to drop off. And so if the desire is then underpinned by discipline, I always think, like, discipline shows up when motivation doesn't, right? I mean, we get motivated all the time, but discipline shows up when motivation doesn't. I heard, I think it was Chris Williamson talked about this on one of his podcasts, where he said, everybody who's at the starting line of the 100-meter dash has the motivation to win. They have the goal to win that. There's only going to be one person who's going to do that. And that generally falls on who is the most disciplined. And that's just a fact. And so the discipline, I think, is the interpretation of what we have in the metaphysical world and translates that into the activities that we take in the physical world. And that's how we get our outcomes.
I love discipline so much. It's like one of my favorite things, because there's so many days where it's cold, it's rainy. Do I feel like going to the gym? Not really. My bed's cozy. But again, I do it like every single morning. Those cold showers, there's never like a morning where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm so excited to jump in the cold shower. But it's like, it's training that mind body connection. It's like my mind says do it, boom, my body moves. And that translates not only just when you're doing the cold shower, but again, you're like about to, you don't really want to go to the gym. Mind says do it. You get in the car and you go. You're about to pick up that weight. 3, 2, 1, boom, let's go. And same thing, like when you're out, when you have to make a decision at work, or an opportunity presents itself, or whatever, like when you're living your life, you don't want to do something, but you're like, wait, this is outside of my comfort zone. I'm supposed to step outside of my comfort zone. My comfort zone is holding me hostage in the land of mediocrity, and the only escape is to step outside of it. So yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. Discipline is everything.
absolutely. Now, the last thing is belief. And I want to talk a little bit about belief and sort of how does that connect to the other two?
So belief is actually the most important component, because belief is actually what's going to bridge you from where you're at into where you want to be. The reason is because we can know with absolute clarity what it is that we want. However, if we don't believe in ourselves, if we don't believe that we're worthy, if we don't believe that we're capable of attaining that thing, there's always going to be that vibrational discrepancy where the desire that we most long for is always just out of reach. And so, therefore, in order to level up our vibration and become a vibrational match with that which we would like to create or attract or experience into our life, we have to believe in ourselves. The power of believing is everything. It's so powerful. And not only that, but it also is tied in to our identity, because our identity, who we believe we are, is what's going to be the number one motivator. Like we always want to act in consistency with who we believe that we are. Again, if we are where we are today based on every decision that we've made, if we want a new reality, if we want unprecedented success, if we want six pack, if we want double our bank account, we're going to have to start thinking different thoughts. We're going to have to start making different actions, or making different decisions and taking different actions. And in order to do that, we're essentially going to have to become a totally different person. And so that's where it's all about rewiring the subconscious mind and shifting your paradigm. Death of the ego, which is actually super scary for a lot of people. I mean, like, how long have you been you? How many years? How many decades? How long has it served you to be you? It served you really well for quite some time. So therefore, letting go of everything that you've known, everything that's familiar, everything that's comfortable, and like you said, making the decision and then reinforcing it with discipline, that is what is going to take you from where you're at to where you want to be. And you have to decide and believe that you are worthy and that you can absolutely have that.
Well, and I think when you talk about beliefs, belief doesn't have to be something that's not grounded on fundamentals. Belief, I think, can sit in two categories. You've got the categories of the qualitative beliefs, which are just, you have this inherent belief that you can do something. Like Kobe Bryant probably had an inherent belief that he could be the best basketball player out there. Tiger Woods, the best guy. Like there's something in their brain that said Elon Musk knew that he was going to come out with this car and it was going to happen. He had an inherent belief, and that qualitative belief could go in the face of everything that is true to the world. At least in the way that we see it in the analog space. But then there's the idea that there's a quantitative belief. And the quantitative belief says that if somebody's traveled down that road before, and all I have to do is follow the roadmap that they gave me, it becomes very easy to quantitatively tie yourself from point A to point B. And so, because there's business people, they built $1 billion business. Okay, so I know I could do that. Somebody else has done it before. That means if I did the exact same thing at the exact same time with the exact same conviction, I should be able to achieve the exact same result. And I think that belief doesn't have to be something that is not tied to the realm of what we understand to be true in the what we'll call the analog space. It can actually be underpinned by that. And that's through systems and models and processes that people have followed before. Like when you talk about your blueprint is a system and it's a model, and it's for something that people can follow and say, well, if somebody's done this before and they've seen success, there's a good likelihood that if I follow this path, which is a quantitative way of looking at things from a belief perspective, that they can assume that they have a higher degree of success of hitting that outcome.
Absolutely. And that's exactly why you have to know with clarity what you want. And so therefore we can put together the roadmap and get you there, take those steps and essentially set you up for success using those tools. So that way you can control your states. That way you know what you want. And so that way you can really understand that a belief is nothing more than a thought that we keep thinking over and over again. And the cool thing is we can change our beliefs at any given time. We're one decision away from a completely different life. And the other thing is we are not our beliefs. We are not our thoughts. The thoughts that we think in our head, it's all about being aware of the thoughts that we think and then choosing, wait, does this thought serve me? Does this belief serve me? And that's the work, because that little voice in our head, it really tries to tear us down, and it can be really difficult and tell us some really ugly things and really push us off our path of greatness. But if we can get really familiar with that voice and become aware of it, then we can quiet it, or we can shift it, or we can change it. And it's all about taking back control of your life.
I love it. Now, for people to reach you, they would go to ultimatesuccessblueprint.com is the easiest way to find you. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually have a robust 16-week program that is based on the 3 pillars that we talked about: energy, desire, and belief. But what we've done is we've condensed it into a 6-part series. Normally we charge $1,000 for this training, but exclusive to your listeners, if they go to ultimatesuccessblueprint.com and they put in the promo code Money Mindset, they'll be able to download this training for free. So at absolutely no charge, they can start implementing these tools and techniques that are going to raise their vibration and set them up for success. So that way they can live a better tomorrow and they can start living a more fulfilling life.
I love that. And what I love is the journey that you've had. You went from 16-year-old girl saying, I've got a mission in life. I want to be able to, achieve, with what you're doing with the horses. And you've built a whole ecosystem of success out of that. I mean, looking at the pictures from the place that you set up, the High Vibe Trail, horseback riding place, like, the pictures are awesome. It looks like it's an absolute blast. And you've been able to develop that. And then you've got this blueprint program that you're running, and you're just running at such a high level. And I think that's just amazing as a guy who has a daughter and seeing what you're doing now. Hopefully she doesn't get thrown from horses as much as you did, but I'm certainly sure if she does, it'll develop the character that you have. So it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today.
Oh, I love that. Oh, thank you so much, Steve. It was my pleasure being here. Thank you for having me. I loved the conversation, and I look forward to our next one.
Awesome. It sounds great. Look forward to seeing you actually at the ranch. I'm going to bring my daughter out. So
can't wait to have you guys.
Thank you. And guys, this is the Money, the Mindset, and the Mentoring podcast. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you on the next one.